Boats Rise. Little Feet, a new song, almost a new band. That was Scott Sharrod on slide guitar there. He's taken over from Paul Burrays, who died recently, very sadly, for the band. Of course, they lost Lau George many years ago. But Bill Payne, the keyboard player and the drummer and the bass player, have kept the band going. And they're planning a world tour next year. Wow. So I came across that song recently and I thought you guys have got to hear that. So, Ra, welcome to MMP. Sure. And I'll just get the sound levels right so we're coming across nice and clear.
Good.
How are you doing?
Very fine, thanks.
That's good.
Māori, we might say kei te pai.
Kei te pai, yes. So should we talk a little bit about Māori Language Week? Because it's becoming a very important event in our annual calendar now, isn't it? There's a lot more awareness of it, a lot more interest, a lot more activities.
So much so that they want to move it to a month now, September.
Oh, really?
And I'm not too sure that the Prime Minister knows what she got into with Matariki being a day.
Yes,
because we actually celebrated it for a month as well. So we thought we'd let her say, it's a day, and that might be the start of our month of celebration.
Yes.
But I think there's just so much going on, as you've already said, about for it to be a week, and so people are doing it in their lives, but the whole of New Zealand get to celebrate it for that week, which is awesome.
Yes, and it gives us a chance to experience the depth of the culture, because it's not the Maori way to rush things, is it? Or to, cram it all in. It's.
I think in cramming it all in, you might just be paying lip service, or just going, just doing a cover job as opposed to actually appreciating what's there. And so, but sometimes you need to go on a journey, and the journey could start with a surface thing, and almost all New Zealanders are rugby fans, and seeing the haka is one way into that. And while people might say, we get too much of the haka, the celebration overseas, as people go and find other New Zealanders, is to represent our culture in the haka. And so obviously there's te reo in the haka. But as much as perhaps once were warriors is more exciting than once were gardeners, and so sometimes the dramatic of the haka is what people come into. But as you're saying, the depth of the language is a whole lot more, and a lot more people in New Zealand are appreciating that.
Yeah, sure. And more people learning the language, struggling to learn, and with that comes possibly a new way of thinking about things, because there are things that are described in Maori, that there are Maori words for, that we don't even know exist in English. We don't even think of it like that, or take an interest in, the deeper, the more mysterious, the more unseen within the event, within the process.
So an example of that is the word mauri. And so mauri is a life essence. But we might think about somebody who's on life support and think, have they got the life essence?
Yes.
Well, they might have the life essence, but mauri means more than the life supports situation.
Yes.
Actually, there's different parts of mauri, like ihi, wihi and wana. And ihi and wihi and wana are talking about the excitement of life, the thrill of life, being enamoured with life. So I think that we might. There's a place just out of Carterton called Mauri Oho, and that means the awakening of the Maori. And so I think we might have been the first adrenaline tourists in terms of having an ancient form of this adrenaline rush that is the thrill of life. And Mauri Oho is just out of Gladstone, and Mauri Oho is about the awakening of the life and the thrill of life. It's seeing a 20-metre waterfall. And if we see it around Wairarapa, can you tell me where the 20-metre waterfall is? I don't know that many people would be able to tell us where a 20-metre waterfall is.
No.
And one of the reasons is because it's on a private person's land, and so and they run a farm, and having tourists come in and out of there might go against the farm. Plus, it's not the Wairarapa way. We'd like to go out to a beach and there's just us on the beach. I've got a little joke that says, you're from Wairarapa when you go out to the beach and you see another car and you think to yourself, overcrowded. And so we like it just for whoever we're going with, whether it's a family, and it's just our beach for the day. And but sometimes these things can be hidden from us because it's in a private land, and I can very well understand that person. But in terms of Māori oho, the thrill of life is the awakening to that thrill of life is something that a lot of us cherish. And so
So would you have grown up in the time when speaking Maori was forbidden, or it was really looked down on, frowned on at school and in some other social meeting places?
Yeah, let's just take what you've said and split it up a little. So there's the punishment for speaking Māori.
Really,
and so then that might have moved on to being a lot more subtle about how we do that, and rather than punishing people, they might have been thinking, well, what's the use of Māori? And so I grew up in more of what's the use of Māori? We're international citizens, we're world citizens, and Māori doesn't have a place in time in terms of communication. Had we thought about that reasoning a bit more, we might have thought then, why aren't we learning Chinese? There's more Chinese speakers in the world than even English. Though the English part might have been thinking about how to go across different borders. One of the things, though, in an adversarial situation is that you can't have both. And so actually when you think about agreeing about something, well, you can have both. And while international parts might not have been appreciated, what might be appreciated is understanding different cultures. So rather than coming perhaps with the English language and expecting English culture, there's a culture that already exists. And so when we go to places like Pakistan or from the Philippines, we go there and we think, what's their culture about? And so in terms of being an export-driven economy, when we go and see people, it's not the best way to kind of come and say, well, our culture is better than yours, so why don't you buy from us? We would normally expect people to be defensive about that. So the language of economy might be about how do we work together. The language of economics is, in terms of trade, in order for you to appreciate me, I need to appreciate you. We're trading some commodity, and we're looking at each other about how we might make each other's lives better. So now Te Reo Māori understands a different culture, because within the reo is an understanding of our culture, and so as people understand things Māori, they start to appreciate our culture a little more. And actually a whole lot of New Zealanders are finding that something that's desirable, something that they want to do. So we've wised up. Well, but those were pretty sinister times, weren't they? Or do you think it was just ignorance and prejudice coming into play, and power positions, whatever, just disrespect was kind of allowed? Rights and things weren't really understood, or even if you were looking for the best part of that, you're saying, well, these people actually want us to be players on the world stage, and so they're inviting us along. So even if I took the best part of that, it still doesn't match up with why we'd want to be on the world stage. No, we wouldn't want to be on the world stage for domination. We might want to be on the world stage in terms of trade again, but in terms of relationships. And so, when we appreciate other cultures, then we're on the world stage in terms of relationships.
Yeah.
And,
yes.
One of the things that even the Prime Minister said about Māori, the things that she learned, one was manaki, how to be generous as a host.
Yeah.
And the other one was, and manaki is made up of two words, mana and aki. And so aki means to acknowledge and to understand the mana of someone. And so then if you start with that position already, that everybody has mana, and you're trying to acknowledge that, then manaki is an awesome part. The other word that she said that she wants to teach her baby Neve, and that was before Neve was born up in Waitangi, as she spoke there. She said, I'd like to teach her about kaitiaki as well. And so tiaki is care, giving care. Kai is, the prefix kai, is the person who does that. And so a carer is, another lovely part. Kaitiaki are normally associated with the environment, but they can be associated with other treasures that somebody takes care of. And, wouldn't it be lovely if in old people's homes and we had carers that they were kaitiaki. And they were kaitiaki, those people who would be guardians or stewards over older people. And kind of that. And then if we see, so there's a kōrero in Māori called a mokopinatanga. So where the kaumātua, or the older people, the grandparents look after their grandchildren. Not in the way that we go, we're dropping them off at your place every day, or they're living with you so I can go and do my own thing. It's a little more about how do we weave those three generations together as opposed to offloading our responsibility. And so in terms of weaving that together, that's just a lovely kōrero about intergenerational understanding. So whānau sometimes is translated as family, which is sometimes who lives under your roof. When actually whānau in Māori thinking is at least three generations. And how that group, and obviously not always living under the same roof, but how they connect and how they come together.
That's a wonderful story, and it works too, doesn't it? I mean, we think of it from an English or Pākehā perspective, and you can see trouble. Well, who's responsible? If mum and dad then give a child to a grandparent or one of their parents to raise, we wouldn't think of that. I mean, in some situations it happens because the parents are either have ceased to exist, they've died, or they've become totally dysfunctional. But it's usually on that negative basis rather than a positive basis, and something that's understood within the family, both by the grandparents who take this on and the child who then is in that. It's still in the whānau, isn't it? But it's living with grandma, grandpa.
And that kind of weaving of people is associated with a group who are responsible for the national strategy for Te Reo Māori called taurawhiri. Now, taura is a rope, and whiri is the weave or a plait. Sorry about that. But taurawhiri then is about how does the reo weave in all of our situations. So sometimes people can use language to dominate or to have their opinion go across what should be said. And so sometimes in terms of the power play of language, we learn what that is so that we can, one, understand what the decision makers are going to do, and two, what the authority of groups are. So the language of law might not be when we start to think about languages in terms of English, Chinese and Māori, in terms of race and countries, might be thinking, well, that's what Te Reo Māori's a part of. But if we took what you opened with in terms of having a deeper understanding about Te Reo Māori, then actually it's a little more about perhaps usages. And so the language, the use of language in terms of sometimes getting things right or getting things wrong in different ways is what we might be exposed to now during COVID-19. And here's a language, and if we're listening to that language, how much of that language is based on change, behaviour change? So going from a group of people who might be very cautious about what they do to somebody who we're wanting to make sure that they take something like a vaccine. And so then the language, if we're watching that, then we got to be thinking, okay, so how much of your communication is about behavioural change and wanting me to change? And how much of this language is about factual information?
And even accepting new values, there's a whole value system behind that too, isn't there?
Yeah, and so in the language of behaviour change, where your value system might not fit the mainstream value system, we understand that. Now, this is not picking us either side in terms of the adversarial vaxxers versus anti-vaxxers. What it's asking, what I'm thinking of asking people is, let's just understand the language here.
Yeah.
Because one of the things about, and let's go wider than COVID-19, one of the things about fake news is that language could be the part that's pulling us in. One of our whanaunga made a really interesting comment. He said that in the debate between should we call our country New Zealand or Aotearoa, people didn't make that kind of thinking when they chose Oranga Tamariki for a department of government. And so by changing the name, change the status of that, what used to be child, youth and family. And now it's called Oranga, which should be healthy, and Tamariki, or children's health. And so, and living, children's way of living. And so while that's the thing, that's the Māori reo, has the department or ministry that's been there valued the reo by changing what they're doing to match that. And so amongst Māori, that might have been, well, that's not been our experience. And so by changing the name to a Māori name, have we thought that we're taking on all Māori in terms of doing that? And so now,
or even recognising the need to do things very differently. I mean, perhaps the name change is just a way of kind of smoothing the waters, trying to get through a difficult time because the performance is so bad. The delivery is almost completely absent. The people that are being kind of looked after are the staff and the management. Well, and they're not really, but they're almost putting themselves before their clients. So when we talked about getting a deeper meaning from the words, if we were getting a deeper meaning from a title, then we'd need to look at a whole range of the policies and methods and actions of a group to say, okay, so you've taken on a name, what's the depth of that name? Yes.
And so if we were taking on Aotearoa rather than New Zealand, a lot of people were going, oh, you've got a victory because you've got a name change as Te Māori. And we might say, well, actually, we still want to know what, how do all boats rise in terms of Aotearoa, as opposed to just calling us a new name to quell the people who are bringing up different issues from a Māori perspective. And one of those might be the reo. But, when all boats rise, the thing that I would love to think is that actually everybody in New Zealand is improved by knowing the reo.
Yes. It
even
can
if
be exciting, and this life, that what you talked about earlier, the zest for life.
Yeah.
When you discover what's behind the meaning of a word, it's real. This view of life energy, and you could even go further and look at the realms of spiritual processes and engage with that. And again, our English language is rather limited to how we describe what happens in the spiritual world.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind just sounding out something here. So the idea about STEM is science, technical, engineering and maths, and thinking about that and trying to improve that situation, because there might be a lot of innovation that comes out of that in terms of being productive. And some of the factual language that we speak now, even let's get away from the science side, so the legal side is about not having ambiguous meaning. And really I think what's been left behind a little is the art of language. And so if STEM became STEAM in terms of adding arts into the science, technical, engineering and maths, so now we have arts as well, then the communication of science might be a whole lot more, be a whole lot better. And that doesn't take away from the factual language in terms of that happening. Though I am afraid that in some schools in New Zealand there might be a stream of language. So then we might be including rugby as a part of the education and language service there too. That would be the R of stream. But in terms of looking at bilingual people across the world, their understanding of other cultures is highly attuned as opposed to monolingual speakers. And then the other thing that bilingual speakers might do is trying to understand language rather than accept language. And that might, in the days of fake news, help us to understand what's the message here, and why am I getting a hard sell? And why do they want me to have behaviour change? And did they tell me that they wanted my behaviour change before they gave me the language of behaviour change? And if they haven't told me that, why not? And so all of those things are just a little bit about interpreting where we are in this world.
Van Morrison has put out a rather controversial album of songs. He's Irish, right? He's from Belfast, Northern Irish, and a great songwriter, great musician. And his last album is called The Last Record Project, Volume 1. And there are several songs on it that have become very controversial because he's very opposed to the draconian population control measures that have come in the UK, and I think he's also talking about what's happening in the United States. And one of his songs is titled "The Long Con." So I'm just telling you about that. I'm not saying I agree with everything that Van Morrison says or represents, but he's a warrior and a man to listen to. He puts his message across, again, with language and with music, because that's the other element that you could bring to language. I mean, there's poetry, which is taking language another step and then adding music to that. And then you've got a really powerful tool, haven't you? And it can be very individualized.
Well, because one of the great things about a song is that, sometimes when you start to hum a song, you can't get it out of your head for quite a long time. Because there's a rhythm and a cadence, and the words all come together very powerfully. And so one of the things how we kept the reo going was through storytelling. Because now the storytelling's a lot about how we remember a message. And part of the storytelling that we're become used to, perhaps with Disney and others, is the heroic journey. And when we think about it a little more, the heroic journey is sometimes about individuality, overcoming the group. And so what if the group was your hero? So rather than having a community champion, what if we had a champion community?
Yeah.
So sometimes we look for a community champion who's going to be the leader of our community, and we put that on politicians who run a popularity contest in terms of democracy.
Yes.
And they use the language to be popular, as opposed to be a language that might be a leader. But rather than trusting one person for that, and, that sounds like a dictatorship, really. Well, why doesn't the community all stand up, everybody as their champions, and say, this is how we come together as a community. We come together as a champion community that gets behind our champions, and we all share the load of going forward.
Yeah, and we work on maintaining the health and the relevance and the integrity of that champion community, and we even become kind of understanding of what's required to maintain the quality in that community.
And so where's Māori in their champion community?
Yeah.
So if it was a mosaic or even a weave, but let's look at a mosaic for a moment. In a mosaic, you might have all different colours, different shapes, different texture in this mosaic. But the mosaic builds one picture. And every colour and every texture and every shape is appreciated for its uniqueness. And so then it doesn't mean that the group overpowers the individual anymore. It's about how the individuals work together to become a group.
And there's an interdependence there too, isn't there? One can't do without the other. And
the better thing about that for people is that they're looking for that interdependence. Rather than saying, I've got one style that fits all, you should all be like me.
Or that it's a weakness.
Or that it's a weakness, yes.
I've got another song for us to play. Cool. This is the Blind Boys of Alabama with Mark Cohn.
Yeah.
And they're playing a song that's titled Walk in Jerusalem.
To be ready, I want to be ready, I want to be ready, I want to walk in Jerusalem just like God. Well, I want to be ready, I want to be ready, I want to be ready, I want to walk in Jerusalem just like God. Well, my God told me just what to do, walk in Jerusalem just like God. If you make one step, I'll make two. Walk in Jerusalem just like God. Well, these are the words he said to me. Walk in Jerusalem just like God. If you make two steps, I'll make three. Walk in Jerusalem just like God. Well, I want to be ready. I want to be ready. I want to be ready. I want to walk in Jerusalem just like God. Well, I want to be ready. Yeah, I want to be ready. I want to be ready. I want to walk in Jerusalem just like God.
Well, John said the city was 4 square wide.
I walk in Jerusalem just like God.
I've seen my friends on the other side.
I walk in Jerusalem just like God.
Yeah, John said the city was built 4 square.
I walk in Jerusalem just like God.
I won't be content till I get there.
Yeah, walk in Jerusalem just like God.
I said I want to be ready.
Yeah, I want to be ready. I want to be ready.
Oh yeah,
to walk in Jerusalem
just like John. I want to be ready.
Yeah, I want to be ready.
Got to be ready.
I want to be ready.
I want to
walk in Jerusalem just like God. Well, when I get to heaven, I'm gonna sing and shout. I walk in Jerusalem just like God. There'll be nobody to turn me out. Yeah, walk in Jerusalem just like God. Gonna walk with the Father, talk with the Son. Yeah, walk in Jerusalem just like God. I'm telling about the world I just came from. I walk in Jerusalem just like God. I'm gonna walk, 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 walk. Walk in Jerusalem just like God. Gonna walk, strut, singing tall. I walk in Jerusalem just like God. Well, I want to be ready. Yeah, I want to be ready. just like John.
Blind Boys of Alabama, all the way from Alabama. I met them, with some of them, at WOMED 2 years ago, and I got them to sign this album. They're very hospitable guys. I was really impressed with an album they put out with Charlie Musselwhite playing harmonica with them, and they did songs like Amazing Grace with full-on harmonica solo.
To the tune of The House of the Rising Sun.
Yes, they do. They do that, yes.
There's a bit of conflict going on right there.
Yeah, exactly. Ra, let's get back to you in just a minute. I'd like to give them our listeners a bit of information about what's coming up in the next week, and in particular today, 23rd of September, Thursday, 23rd of September, is the spring equinox. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's being celebrated out at Stonehenge, Aotearoa, at Ahiarua Road in Carterton, up on the hill there. You know where Stonehenge is, folk. Well, from tonight at 6 o'clock till 7:45, they've got a spring equinox celebration. Richard will be giving a talk, and the other two who work with him might also be adding to that, and then there'll be some kind of festival event in the henge right on sunset, and with a bit of luck, this front that's coming through now will have passed, although I do hear it's really hosing down in Nelson, which is not a good sign for us for later in the day. So that's 6 o'clock tonight at Stonehenge to celebrate the spring equinox. There's a tulip festival on this coming Saturday, the 25th of September. I told you about that last week. It's at the Longbush Cottage, 1023 Longbush Road in Carterton. That starts at 10 o'clock on Saturday, and there's another session on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. $10 admission. So if you love tulips, I'm sure you will have an absolute feast going to the Longbush Cottage Tulip Festival either Saturday or Sunday this weekend.
It's all happening in Carterton.
It's all happening in Carterton. And then there's the men's group overnight in the wilderness. That's Mount Holsworth Park, but that's still Carterton.
Yes.
You know, south of the Wainawa River, and you're in Carterton.
Wow.
Yeah, so look out. The men's group overnight, that's Saturday the 25th. They do this once a month. Looks like it's about the fourth Saturday in the month, from 4 o'clock in the afternoon through till midnight. But I think the plan is you stay overnight, so you set up a camp. I'll just read to you a little bit of the spiel. This comes from my friend Jonas, who is very instrumental in setting this group up. Sharing the stories around the campfire with an open and diverse group of local men, 17 years old and older, who feel the need to connect with self, group, mountains, river, night, silence in the forest. Happy to have 14-year-olds and older, as long as you're accompanied by a grandfather or caregiver. We meet every fourth Saturday of the month during the afternoon, walk about 20 minutes from our cars to the campsite, build our tents if needed, make a fire, have a current fire permit so they're legal, share stories, kai, maybe some music, experiences, swim in the river a little bit later on towards Christmas, and sleep under the stars. So there you are, folks. Men's group overnight in the wilderness, 4 o'clock Saturday afternoon at the Tararua Forest Park, and you're all welcome. You can just turn up. I'm not even sure that there's a cost. There might be a koha fee that they're looking for. And just to mention one more thing before I get back to Ra, the wonderful movie This Is and That Was New Zealand is on again today at the screening room, and it will be on Saturday, it'll be on Monday and Wednesday. So that's 4 more showings of the wonderful film that was first exposed to the world at the Tokyo Expo. Actually, it was Osaka the Expo in Osaka in 1970.
Wow.
Did you hear about that movie? It's a 3-screen movie.
Wow.
And it's panoramic New Zealand. And I think there's some cultural stuff in it too. I think I did see it way back.
Yeah.
Can't actually remember, but
I'm planning on going.
That's on Saturday. I can't promise to go with you that day. I could probably join you on Wednesday. There's a 6 o'clock in the morning session next week. Wednesday?
Wow.
You're on.
Yeah.
6 a.m. till 7:30. Actually, that says p.m. So maybe the a.m. and the p.m. have got mixed up. I think it's Wednesday, 6 p.m. next week. I could make that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that at the end.
Yeah. I was struggling at the 6 a.m. time.
Yeah,
so
you would. That's our meditation time.
You mentioned a word there, a place named Ahiaruhi.
Yeah.
And Aruhi is a fern root. And after the mini ice age, which is a debatable part, but after the colder weather didn't allow kumara to grow within Wairarapa and on our coastline, then people would grow fern root, and they would eat fern root rather than kumara. Now, if I had a choice, it wouldn't be a fern root.
No. It would need a bit of cooking, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, you kind of, if you had 2 pots and you had a rock in one and aruhi in the other, you might throw away the aruhi and eat the rock. But
by mistake.
But no, out of choice actually, because the woody aruhi would be pretty hard. So what Māori would do is grow the young aruhi. Mm. And so in growing the young aruhi, what they would do is burn off a piece of bush. Mm. So ahi means a fire, and aruhi means a fern root. So a fern root fire was getting the ground ready to grow fern root again. And so one of the natural boundaries down at Ahiaruhi in a easterly, which would be mild coming over the hill there, would be the river.
The Ruamahanga.
The Ruamahanga. So as the fire went down to the Ruamahanga, it wouldn't be catching because there would be a fire break. Mm. And so it's one of the ways that Māori progressed in terms of having a space for fern root. Now down there, of course, Michael Williams and Karen Williams have an amazing farm there. Mm. And they're ready to launch their wheat into bread. Yes. And they've already launched it, but they haven't been able to use the title just yet. Yeah. And when they get their own title, I'm going to commend everyone to make sure you get part of that. They're our neighbours from Hiranuarangi, the marae just down up the waterway in terms of the Ruamahanga.
Is that near Gladstone?
Yeah, near Gladstone. And so just across from their farm is Carter's Reserve. And so, that's a special place for Māori as well, and it's great having special people there. Karen was the champion of conquering the pea weevil, and so she got it taken out in New Zealand by her actions and leading others from all around New Zealand, and it's been something that has been hard to do almost everywhere else around the world. Really. And so she was able to exterminate the pea weevil, and then
they can grow peas again.
Yeah, well, and pea straw, you see.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And so, and pea straw is used for a whole range of things, but a very special place.
Mm. Ra, we're going to have to approach wrapping up.
Oh, okay.
I think I'll have to get you back.
I'd love to come back sometime.
Let's meet again in 4 weeks.
Yep.
I will find an excuse.
Wow.
To do it. I mean,
we can still extend the language or bring the language into another topic. That would be great.
Yes, we could perhaps talk a bit more about music.
Yeah,
too.
Oh, that would be, yeah. One of my concerts, you remember the Blind Boys of Alabama, my first concert was Bob Marley in 1979 at Western Springs.
Western Springs, yes.
What people don't talk about when remembering that day was that Split Ends was on that night. And so
with him as
no, they were in the. I remember it as the Auckland Town Hall, but it might be something. Yeah. It might have been the theatre in Auckland, but In 1979, I'm just happy to remember that I was somewhere in 1979, being that long a time ago.
Mike Chun wrote about that in his book. It was the town hall.
Yeah.
And I think it went on afterwards. They might have even linked up with Bob Marley somewhere for an after party.
I can imagine.
I could be making that up, folks.
Yeah.
Don't quote me.
Well, he did hook up with, going to see a marae, so that's been a famous story as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Ra. Thanks very much for coming. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
And have a lovely day.
Thank you.
So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the farmers' markets because they are struggling to get the numbers up again with everybody used to being locked down. Please think of Saturday morning heading out to the Solway Showgrounds for the Wairarapa Farmers Market. It's up and running. There's lots of exquisite things. I'll just read out to you some of the things that are on display and available. There's local fruit and vegetables, bread, cheese, eggs, honey, olive oil, sausages, and much more. You can enjoy a coffee and something to eat. And you can have ready-made pies, pizzas, and Middle Eastern chicken rolls. There's also gluten-free, handmade biscuits, cakes, slices, and if you're looking for something crafty, you can shop for bespoke items, including knitting, pottery, jewellery, and other artisan crafts. Care for your skin with locally made balms, creams, soaps, and sprays, including lavender essential oil. And you can transform your garden with New Zealand native plants, veggie seedlings, and seaweed fertiliser. It's all happening. And this Saturday, they're open from 9 o'clock through till 1 o'clock. And guess who's providing the live music? Well, you're right. It's Keith and me, the mini Graphia ensemble. We'll be in the back there somewhere, probably being told to turn down very quickly because we do tend to play a bit loud, especially Keith with his enthusiasm for what he can do on at least one, if not two, keyboards in a rack. Look forward to seeing you on Saturday, folks. And the Featherston Weekly Market is also on Saturday at Fitzherbert Street in Featherston from 8 o'clock in the morning till 1:30. It offers fresh produce, food trucks, doggy treats, creators, and much more. Great atmosphere, amazing food, and community spirit. So please, if you can't get to the Solway Showgrounds Farmers Market in Masterton, head down to Featherston and take up an interest in the Featherston market and what they can do for you. We're getting to the end of the show. I'm not going to play you another song. I'm going to keep giving you information in the few minutes that remain. For those of you who love the Eagles, this is a heads up for what's coming in a couple of weeks. On Sunday, the 10th of October, at the Carterton Event Centre, Hotel California, the Eagles Experience. So check that out. You probably need to book tickets. It's from 7 till 9:30. Sunday the 10th of October at the Carterton Event Centre. And on at Aratoi, the Wairarapa Museum of Art and History, on the 1st of October, which is next Friday, there's a special hands-on program for our littlest artists. It's titled Art Explorers. And this is on the first Friday of the month. We open doors to preschool age session inspired by one of our exhibitions. Each session has a hands-on activity that you can take home and proudly put on the fridge. So basically you're making fridge magnets with a picture on. It's a free program, but you will need to register at the office, the front desk at Aratoi, because there's limited spaces available for your preschool children. The Wairarapa Camera Club has a get-together coming up, starting today and going Friday, Saturday and Sunday. It's the biennial exhibition by members of the Wairarapa Camera Club, and that's also on at Aratoi. So starting at 10 o'clock this morning, and the last showing, or the last time you can see that, will be 4 o'clock, up till 4 o'clock on Sunday the 26th. The club was formed in 1953 and takes pride in moving with the times and striving for art photography of the highest quality. A couple more items for you. This is actually just south of the Rimatakas. There's the Blossom Valley. This can only happen in the mid-spring when the blossoms are out. And it's at Ashtown Norwood Gardens, just near Kaitoki, north of Upper Hutt. As you come off the Rimataka Hills, it's on the right, just before the bridge. So that's opening today, 8 o'clock till 5 o'clock, and that goes through until Sunday, also 8 till 5. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Blossom Valley at the Ashton Norwood Gardens. It's $10 to get in there, and there really is spectacular cherry blossoms, dozens of trees, and you walk in underneath the blossoms while it's all happening. It's delight to be in the magnificent canopy of the cherry blossoms in the beautiful hidden gem gardens that are found off State Highway 2. It's to honour and celebrate the Japanese origins of the cherry blossom and offer an experience of enjoying Asian food while exploring the stunning 14 acres of gardens, which most of you didn't even know existed there, behind the restaurant. So check that out. If you can't make it today, you've got 3 more days in which to call in there. And finally, happening in the Hutt Valley is the Gillies Garden Art House Tour, which is on this Saturday and Sunday from 10 in the morning. It's at 6 Tiniroa Grove in Silverstream. And the tour includes morning tea, a guided tour of a garden of national significance, viewing of the reception rooms of a Chapman Taylor cottage, and viewing a 40-year collection of New Zealand contemporary art. So Peter and Nella Gillies have put this together, and this is actually their home. Peter has got a wonderful eye for art. He's also a pretty good keyboard-playing pianist. And Nellie, of course, is just knowledgeable in all things. I think Peter does most of the work getting the garden organised. So their garden is open to the public from 10 o'clock on Saturday and then again 10 o'clock on Sunday this weekend. So look out for that. It's $28 for adults, and you can buy tickets on 0800 289 849. 0800 289 849 for tickets for the Gillies Garden Art House Tour. Well, we're nearly on 9 o'clock, folks. Lovely chatting with you, and I'm very pleased to have been able to have a longer conversation touching on some pretty profound issues with Ra Smith, and he'll be coming back in about a month to carry on that intriguing conversation and share his perspective on the world. So have a lovely day, have a great weekend, and I'll catch you next week. Aro Hanui.